Hi folks, welcome to the second session of this Christian belief series in which we look at the key teachings of the Bible and why they're important for us. Well, this week we're going to talk about humanity. We're going to answer the question, who am I and why am I here? Now the answers to these two questions are actually closely related. To know why you are here, you must first understand who you are. Your purpose flows from your identity. And when you fulfill your purpose, you are fulfilling your identity and realizing your potential. Well, the Bible teaches us that we human beings are created by God and made in God's image. This is another way of saying that we are God's children who share in His nature in some sense. So we're distinct from all other creatures. This uniqueness isn't just a matter of what we can do as distinct from other creatures, though this may be part of it. It seems to be something deeper and higher than that. We participate in the divine nature. And we reflect God's glory so that, and this is where we move to our purpose, we can represent God to the rest of creation and to each other. I'll say more about that in a moment. But this is the great dignity and particular sacredness of humanity, that we are created in God's image. This is why we must love one another. Love is the recognition of value. In this case, the infinite sacred value of a human being. As a father, when I look at my children, I don't love them because of what they look like or what they do. No, my love is a deep spiritual recognition of their infinite sacred value as image bearers of God. I remember how breathtaking this experience of love was when I first became a parent. Never have I felt such a sense of sacred preciousness as I did when I looked at that tiny newborn creature. And now, no matter what my children do, I can't stop loving them because my love isn't just admiration. I don't love my children because of their usefulness to me. It isn't because they're even always pleasant to be around. It's because of something inherent in them as human beings. My love is my response to their infinite sacred value because they are first and foremost God's children in God's image. And my love is really just a reflection of God's love for them, for me, and for you. People today tend to be identified according to their occupation, their opinions, their sexual orientation, their class, their race, and so forth. But these things are so insignificant compared to our inherent and shared sacred value. When we classify other people and even ourselves in these ways, we commit a terrible act of desecration. It means that people often feel insignificant and worthless because they're always comparing themselves and being compared to others and deriving their value from how they measure up in relation to others. Your identity and your value is not determined by how you measure up against others. Your identity and value comes from your being created in God's image, from being a child of God. Before I go on to talk about our purpose, let's pause there and reflect on these important truths together. In what remains of this session, I'm going to focus now on our purpose. As I've said, our identity and our purpose are inextricably connected. We are God's children, created in God's image, and our purpose, therefore, is to reflect God's image. We do this in much the same way that the moon reflects the light of the sun. As we are illumined by God, so we reflect God's light. As we love God, worship God, and enjoy God as His children, so we are illuminated by God's glory, and we can reflect this glory to each other, which perpetuates our enjoyment and our worship. To reflect God's glory to each other is also to reflect God's love. As I've said, we are to represent God to each other. To love another person is to recognize and affirm the glory of God in them. But it also involves drawing out the fullness of this glory in each other. In other words, to bless each other. To bless means to enable someone or something to flourish. It means to draw out the fullness of the glory of God in each person, to enable them to become all that God made them to be. Well, this mandate to bless also extends to the rest of creation. As God's children, we are also the rulers over His creation. The natural world is presented in the Bible as something like a sacred temple, a context for enjoyment and worship, in which all created things, though not created in God's image as such, are nevertheless also a reflection of God's glory and goodness. And God wants us to steward and cultivate this goodness in creation, to bring out its full potential. This is what God meant when He told us in Genesis 1, verse 28, to fill the earth and subdue it and to rule over it. This was not a license to exploit the world, but a mandate to care for and cultivate it as a gardener would a garden. We have a high calling indeed. When God gave us authority over the earth, He was committing Himself to implementing His purpose in the world through us. We serve God, not because He needs us, but because He has empowered us and charged us to bless each other and the world around us. We are therefore responsible for each other and the world around us. Now, with great authority comes great responsibility. And with great responsibility comes serious accountability. We will all be called to account for how we live our lives and for how we have wielded our influence on each other and the world around us. So let's not shirk this responsibility. To shirk or downplay our responsibility is to forfeit our dignity and abdicate our role. So if you have failed or done wrong in some sense, take responsibility for that, and God will forgive you and reinstate you and restore you. And I'll say more about that in the upcoming sessions. Let me finish with this. You are loved by God as His child, and your life is of infinite value and immeasurable significance. We have a high calling and purpose, and there is such joy in this purpose. This is where our fulfillment lies. Each of us is equipped in a specific way to play our part, together with the rest of God's children, to see God glorified in this world. So let's become all that we have been created to be. Let's step into the full dignity of our humanity today.